Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Automation Testing Training Program. This is Surendra. Guys, if you remember in the last class, we studied about overview on Jasmine and overview on a describe available in Jasmine, it available in a Jasmine. These two concepts we studied in the last class. So what I'm going to do right now, in the last class, even we created two different text files with a name as a con.js and a spec.js. We created these two files. So here is the folder where exactly we created these two files. So I'm opening this spec. I have given a name of this file as a open app spec. So let me open this one, or what we can do means we can create a new file. Okay, I'm naming this particular as example-spec.js. Okay, so I just created this one as an example spec. Let me open this one with a notepad now. So this is just a JS file where I have created a simple JS file. So if it is creating confusing for you, so what I am doing means I'm deleting this one too. So I don't want to create any confusing. Right click, new text file, open it, and here file, save. So both the things are one and the same. Ultimately we are trying to save this particular file. Okay, save as, or let me save as this particular file. In this one I'm naming it as example-spec.js. So I'm just saving this one with an example spec.js. Great, I just saved this file with the example spec. Now close this one. Let me open this one with a notepad. Great, I opened this one too. Now what we need to do, so here what I'm gonna do right now means let me switch back to my Jasmine framework structure. So here in the PowerPoint presentation, if you observe, we have given a syntax for the Jasmine as a describe and a it. So let me copy this one. So I'm just copying this syntax. Okay, copy this one and I paste it in a notepad. So here if you observe, it contains a describe wherein which a suit. So I'm giving this string parameter as an example suit. Okay, and here the it contains a specification. Okay, the it contains a specification. So it, so here I'm gonna give another string parameter as sample open application. Okay, so I have given these two values, and inside the it I have something as expect. I'm removing that. I don't know what exactly that particular one is, hence I removed that expect. So if you observe, this is a Jasmine syntax wherein which I renamed this string as an example suit, and I have given a name as a sample open application. That's it. So I have defined these two things. The next point is go to the presentation. Okay, so in the current scenario, I would like to open an application. So here to use the commands, I'm using browser.get. So guys, if you remember in WebDriver, in order to open up any application, we used a get command. The same get command I'm using here, and I'm going to pass the application URL. So the application URL is angularjs.org. Okay, this is what my application URL is. I am passing it here. Okay, I'm just excuse me, I'm just passing this application URL. So far you don't know what exactly a browser is, but I have an idea on a get, like comparing with a WebDriver. Get is used to open the application on a browser. So browser.get, so this means it's gonna open up an application. That's fine, it's going to open up an application. But here the only thing is we don't know what exactly a browser is, but here we used both the browser and get commands in this particular it. Okay, great. So I have defined this basic script. So now we need to know about what exactly the browser is and what are all the various operations we can perform on that particular one. So this point is not clear for me, so I'm just copying that information on a Paint document. If you observe, Protractor exports these global variables to a specific test file. So usually your protractor will export these three variables to your spec file. So whatever the file we have created right now, our protractor will export these things. Okay, great. So what are all the things? The first one is a browser. So what is a browser? A wrapper around an instance of a web-driver. So if you observe this browser as an instance of a driver, use it for navigation and page-wide information. If you clearly observe, this browser is used for navigation. Clearly, we have mentioned that this browser is used for navigation. So the first method what we used is a browser.get. So the browser.get method loads a page. So whatever the URL we have specified in a browser.get within the braces, this will load the page. Simply we can say that this browser.get command will open the application. Okay, so usually whenever you are using a browser dot, which is a protractor command, okay, it exports Angular to be present on that particular page. So what is the meaning of this particular one means? Whenever you are using a browser dot get, so whatever the application URL we are specifying, whatever the application URL you are specifying, that URL should contain an Angular content. That's what your protractor used to expect. So here protractor expects Angular to be present on that particular page. So it will throw an error if the page is attempting to load does not contain any Angular library. So the ultimate point out over here is whenever you are using a browser.get, and if at all you are opening an application, okay, if at all you are opening an application, your protractor will try to identify the Angular content on that particular page. If there is no Angular content, then a protractor will throw some error messages as there is no Angular content present on that particular page. Fine. So for suppose if your page doesn't have any Angular controls, in such scenarios, what we can do means we need to interact with the non-Angular page. You may access the wrapper WebDriver instance directly using a browser driver, or you do have some set of commands which we need to call so that your protractor won't consider that page to be an Angular. So like that we need to pass. As of now, the application whatever we are using an Angular page, hence it won't create any problems. So this is the first browser class. Okay, this is the first browser class whatever we have in spec.file. So this global variable contains element global variable is there, by and protractor is there. As of now we haven't implemented these things in a current scenario. Let's stick to this browser, and in the next example we will see all these three things. Okay, in the next example we will see all these three things. Fine. Fine. We have successfully created this spec file now. So what I'm going to do right now means before studying in detail about other components and all those things, let me try to execute this content and see whether it is launching the browser and whether it is opening the application or not. In order to perform such thing, the only thing what you need to do means we need to open the conf.js file, wherein which we need to write down certain logic which will open the application. As of now, I have written some logic here within the conf file. We will see in detail about this conf file moving further in the next lecture. So in the today's class, I would like to execute the current script whatever we have prepared. So my file name is example spec.js. Go back to the conf file. Here I am renaming this to example spec.js. So whatever the file you would like to execute, just give that name here. Guys, we are going to study about what is this spec, what is these capabilities and all those things. We are going to study them. But for now, to see whether this spec file, whatever we have created, is executing or not, I am not explaining this concept. We do have a separated topic which we are going to discuss about all these concepts. Fine. So done up to here. Once after we created up to here, this is the spec.file and this is the conf.file, whatever we have created. In order to execute the test script, I'm opening my command prompt first, and here WebDriver -manager space update. This is the first command I'm hitting. Once this update was successful, then we need to use a WebDriver dot start. So here, let it update first of all. So it's just updating all the information. Once the update was successful, then we will go for WebDriver -manager space start command. So which is going to start this standalone server. Once everything was run successfully, Selenium server is up and running. Great. Now what I am going to do right now means, let me copy the path where in which the conf.file and the spec.files are there. In the newly opened command prompt, switch to that location. CD, switch to the location where exactly our conf file is there. So I just switch it to that. Now, what I am going to do right now means protractor space conf.js. So I'm just using one command which is a protractor space conf.js. I would like to execute the content present in a conf.js. Within the conf.js, we are calling this example spec.js. In the example spec.js, we have written a logic to open this application. That's it. So here, let me hit the enter button and see whether it is launching a browser or not. It should launch a browser, and specifically by default, we are executing the script on a Chrome browser. So it should launch a Chrome browser. Let's see whether it is running or not. See, it launched a Chrome browser, and then it terminated that particular browser instance. Okay, it launched that browser and it terminated that particular instance. And here some kind of error message is displaying uh, in the command prompt. See, if you clearly have a look into the command prompt, it is stating that running one WebDriver instance using this server. So it is stating that describe example suit, and here is some issue with this describe suit declaration. Okay, see, the error message is clearly explaining e-launcher. So there is an error message in your test script, and that particular error is in the example spec1.js, where in which in the describe it is having some issue. It is clearly stating that there is some issue with respect to the describe. Okay, let's have a look into the describe once and see what is the issue. So here there is we have defined this describe properly. So to cross check that, I'm opening some other test scripts. Okay, so here the only issue what we passed out over here is here we have given a single parenthesis, single braces, where here we have given double quotes. So let me change this one to single uh, brace. Okay, so I'm just changing this one to single colon. Basically for both the describe and it, I changed it to a single colon and I saved this particular one. Now again, I'm using protractor conf.js again to see whether it is having any issues or not. Again, I hit that particular one. This time it launched a browser, and again it has some error messages. Okay, so let's see this time what exactly the error message is. It is launching a browser, but it is having issues in communicating with that. Specifically, the error message here, if you have a look into the line number, okay, if you have a look into the line number, basically it is stating that app data room Jasmine 97/3, so process execute. Okay, and it is stating with a describe and a it. Fine. So let's see, let me compare this one, what exactly the issue with the previous file I have created. So I'm using the describe and it from the previous program. The same describe and it I have already created. I'm just copying that particular stuff and I am replacing it here. And at last, I would like to add the braces as well. Okay, I'm adding the braces at the end of my test script. Okay, so one brace is for describe, this is closing braces for describe, this is another closing braces for it and a describe. We are just closing it and a describe. So here the describe angular JS, it and everything is specified. Now let me rerun this particular stuff. So I'm just executing this one this time. So it launched a browser. This time it opening the application and it terminated the browser. So if you observe this, okay, if you observe this particular info here, one spec got executed and the zero failures are there, and this much of a seconds are it took, and your WebDriver, zero instances of your WebDriver is running. Chrome 01 is passed. Your test script executed on a Chrome browser. Configuring of a browser, we are going to study in a conf.js. But for now, if you clearly observe, we just hard-coded the values in a conf.js. And finally, when we executed the test script, it executed successfully on a Chrome browser, which launched the application and terminated the browser, which is clearly displaying this command prompt itself. So guys, if you clearly observe what exactly we did means, we created a spec file in which we used a browser.get command to open the Angular application, and then we used the existing conf.js file. Okay, we used the existing conf.js file in which we have a changed the one which we created now, which is a spec file. We haven't studied anything about a conf.js, which we are going to study in the next class. But so far what we did, we used a browser.get command to launch a browser. Great guys, it is launching a browser. Once after the browser was launched, the next point is your program need to interact with the elements in the browser. This is the most important thing, right? Every tool, the most important phase is basically the tool need to interact with the elements present on a browser. So here, how your protractor is gonna interact with the elements present on a browser, for which I'm going to my second variable here, which is an element. Okay, I'm just going to my second variable, which is an element. So what is the significance of this element global variable used in a protractor? A helper function for finding and interacting with the DOM elements on a page for your testing. So here, this element global variable is used in a protractor to interact with the DOM elements present on a web page. The element function searches for an element on a web page. It requires a one parameter, which is a locator strategy for locating an element. If you compare this one by using a WebDriver, we use a driver.find element. That find element and this element are one and the same. For the find element command, we use it to pass a by ID or something like that. The same way here also, for this element, we are gonna pass a by parameter. Okay, so what we are going to pass in a by a collection of element locator strategies. So we can specify either id, css, or any attribute of that particular object. So here in protractor, in order to identify any object, we are using element and followed by dot desired property. This element is similar to that of, okay, let me make a note here. This element is similar to that of a find element in a WebDriver, and this by is similar to that of by dot or css or xpath in a WebDriver. So we are comparing both the WebDriver and this one here. Great. So if you observe your test script right now, okay, the spec.js, whatever we have created, on that spec.js, we used this Angular JS application, right? We used this Angular JS application. So now what I am trying to do means angularjs.org. Let me open this angularjs.org and let's try to find some objects, a unique property for that, and let's try to perform some operation on a browser. Okay, fine. Let me open this example spec.js. This contains only a browser.get. Now identify an object and perform some operations on that. Okay, perform some operations on that. So I would like to open this angular js.org application. Copy the application URL and open it on a browser. For an instance, let's open it on a Chrome browser only. So I'm just opening this URL now. Okay, I'm just opening this URL on a Chrome browser. So here on this particular page, let's scroll down. So here on the top right corner, okay, here is the place. On the top right corner, you have a name and a hello functionality here. Okay, you have a name and a hello functionality. Let's try to enter. Okay, let's try to enter Surendra. Okay, let's try to enter Surendra here. Whenever you enter Surendra here, the text here at this location is changing to hello Surendra. Okay, the text at this location is changing to hello Surendra whenever we are entering here. I'm just entering Surendra Jagannatham. The text here is changing to Surendra Jagannatham. Hello, if I change it to Suresh, the text here is changing to Suresh. Great. So let's try to identify this text field and let's try to perform and entering a value to this particular text field. To cross check or to perform this particular operation, I'm using, okay, I'm performing a right click operation on the text field inspect. So if you clearly observe here, these are the bunch of properties related to that particular text field, right? These are the bunch of properties related to that text field. If you have a look into this one, it is having a ng model your name, ng model your name, placeholder, and too many properties are there for this object. Specifically, ng is gonna represent an angular control, and the type property is a text, and a placeholder is enter a value to this. So like this, we do have these many properties related to an object. Fine. Let's try to switch back to the program. As this object is having a model, let me write down a command here stating that here element by dot. So here, what is the property for this one? By dot model. So, and the model value is your name. Copy this one, switch back to your program, by dot model. So here is the braces in a single quotes. I'm passing this one. So here I am asking it to identify an object by a model. Once after we identified an object, the next one is I'm using a send keys command. If you remember, this send keys is a WebDriver command only. I'm using a same send keys a WebDriver command here. And then I am asking it to enter a value as a Surendra here. Okay, it will enter a value as a Surendra, okay, into that particular text field. Okay, fine. Let me save this document and open the command prompt. Let's try to execute this conf file once again. Whenever we are executing this conf.js file, it should launch a browser, it should open up an application, and then it should enter a value to that particular field. So I maximized that particular browser. Before checking whether that action got performed or not, it terminated the browser. Hence, what I'm doing here means I'm using browser.sleep command and I am asking it to wait for this much of time. So if you remember, this browser.sleep is similar like a thread.sleep in WebDriver. In Java, thread.sleep, which we used in WebDriver Java, the same thing. So I manually maximized my browser here. Okay, we do have a separate set of commands to maximize the browser. Here, Surendra got entered by my program. After the time got lapsed, it will terminate that particular browser instance. Great. So once the time got lapsed, it terminated the browser instance. Cool. So what is this element by dot model is going to do? So it will find the element with the ng model matching your name. This will identify this particular tag in that HTML or in that particular DOM, and it will try to enter a value as a Surendra. Okay, it will try to enter a value as a Surendra. So this is another basic test script we have discussed using a element command. So in the next class, what we are going to discuss means, as of now, we haven't studied any info present in a conm file. We are just specifying the spec and we are executing that. So in the next class, we will study what exactly the information present in a conm.js. Okay, here we are passing the browser name. What are all the things we can pass? Here we have a passed these the conm.js or a specification file. What are all the things we need to pass? All these stuff we will study in the next class. So in the next class we are going to study in detail about a conf.js. Once we are done with the conf.js, then we will work on a few more real-time examples. Okay, so this is the basic info which I have. We'll see you again in the next session. Thank you. Bye bye.